Thanks everybody for joining us for our webinar this evening. My name's Kate Wakelin. I'm from the Unicorn Foundation, soon to be Neuroendocrine Cancer Australia. So I think this might be our very last event as Unicorn Foundation as we're in this exciting transition. But look, I'm really excited to welcome you all to our webinar on legal and financial issues. Tonight we're really very pleased to have a couple of experts with us who I'll introduce in a moment. And for those of you who arrived early, I've already shown you our Q&A panel. So if you've got questions throughout the presentation, feel free to type them in that box at any point that you think of them, and we'll be raising those questions with our guest experts throughout the at the questions and answers section at the end. So sorry, I just got an echo. So just to start off, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, knowing that we've all beamed in from all the corners of the country. So just recognising their continuing connection to land, to waters and culture. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So the evening is going to be a fairly simple structure. We've got our wonderful experts, so Michelle Smidden and Sophie Anderson from the Cancer Council New South Wales Pro Bono service, and they're going to be providing some content for us. And then we'll have some questions and answers. So it's a chance for you really to think of your tricky questions that you might be, wondering what the answer is to. So just to introduce our speakers, and then we'll get going. So Michelle, firstly, Michelle is the manager of the Legal and Financial Support Services at Cancer Council New South Wales, and she leads a team to assist people affected by cancer in financial hardship to access free professional support through the Pro Bono program or financial support through the financial assistance services. So Michelle's got a legal background and a background assisting vulnerable communities, and she's passionate about advocating for and ensuring access to justice for those individuals, particularly through pro bono legal and financial services. So I think she sounds very well placed in our webinar this evening to help us answer these questions. Also introducing Sophie. So Sophie Anderson is a pro bono case manager at Cancer Council New South Wales. And Sophie manages referrals for people affected by cancer who are seeking legal, financial and workplace assistance, as well as managing relationships with volunteer professionals who provide free advice and assistance. Sophie has a number of years' experience supporting people affected by cancer and is passionate about ensuring cancer patients and their families and carers have access to free professional assistance when they need it most. And just, I know this went out on the invitation and it went out in the email today to everyone who's joined us, but for those who are beaming in via YouTube, just to reiterate that the information that we're presenting tonight is general in nature only and won't be specific to your situation. And if you would like to explore specific advice for your own circumstances, we will be providing information about how to link into this at the end of this webinar. But as I said, we'll be able to do some Q&A. So if you've got questions along the way that you think might be of interest more broadly than just yourself, then please do feed them in, and we'll be discussing those questions at the end of the session. So without further ado, Sophie and Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. Sophie and Michelle are going to share their screen and provide us with some PowerPoint slides and some information on your screen, so you'll be able to read along. And yeah, I'll leave it up to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. So everyone, we're just in the process of sharing the screen. We hope that that's worked. And you can see our screen. So I'm Michelle and this is Sophie, so you know who we are. And thank you all so much for being here today and for having us. We're really excited to talk to everyone. So as Kate said, we work at Cancer Council New South Wales and we support people affected by cancer through the Pro Bono program. So I think we do have a quick little poll that Kate was going to set up.
We do, yeah, let me put that up. So So we do have a poll. So hopefully, if this is working, you'll see on your screen a little question, which is, have you heard about the Cancer Council Pro Bono service? And there's a few people who are saying no so far, so that's interesting. Everybody's saying no so far, so that's really interesting because that's a surprise for me. So that's really really good that we're running this, so that will hopefully by the end of the session, everybody's like 700% of everybody who's polled has said, one person said yes. So yeah, which gives us a really good indication that this is an area that not enough people know about.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I think that's both good and bad for us. Obviously, we want people to know about the service that we're offering, the support that we can provide. But when people say no, it means that we're starting from a fresh slate. So we will give you as much information as we can to put you in a position to figure out whether or not this is a good service for you and how we might be able to support. Yeah. So I might hand over to Sophie just to kick us off.
All right, thanks, Michelle. I'm going to start off tonight by explaining exactly what the pro bono program is and what Michelle and I do, and also really just give an overview of the type of assistance that we see people seeking assistance with through our program. So before the Cancer Council pro bono program was established around 10 years ago now, Cancer Council was receiving a lot of queries through our information and support line for people asking questions and seeking advice around a number of issues that we didn't have any services available to provide assistance with. So some of the questions that we were getting, we still get up on my slide here on the screen. So these are really about how to manage debts and mortgages. What if I need to seek another income through superannuation or insurance? Can I access Centrelink payments? I'm having issues at work. What are my rights? What can I do with my employer? Or thinking about getting affairs in order, or trying to make insurance claims, which might have been denied, and not knowing where to go. So I guess because we couldn't at the time provide assistance with these things, we realised that there was an unmet need for this financial and legal assistance for people. We established the pro bono program to try and help people to resolve these issues and provide support around these areas for people. So typically through the service, we say that a lot of people are experiencing a lack of income, either because they're taking time off work for treatment or because of their caring responsibilities, and are really looking to find that additional income. So that could be through insurance or superannuation or Centrelink payments, as well as trying to manage their debts. So particularly when people have ongoing mortgage repayments and they're facing a reduced income, that's something that we really see people needing assistance with. And then I guess the other side of what we see commonly through the program is legal advice. Often people want to seek legal advice, but we find they are concerned about the cost of this and don't really know where to go or how to start seeking this advice. And often this can be around getting their affairs in order, so preparing a will, or managing insurance policies and claims, or workplace issues. So I guess that brings us to what is the pro bono program. So through the program, we are a free referral service. So what we do is we try to connect people with volunteer professionals for free legal, financial and workplace advice. So the service is available for cancer patients, carers and bereaved carers. And it's for people who can't afford the cost of assistance and otherwise wouldn't be able to access this. And what we really try and aim to do through the program is to try and resolve these issues for people, to try and remove some of the stress and burden around these issues so that they can focus on other important things such as their health or their family and friends. So I'll hand back over to Michelle now just to touch on some of these financial issues in a bit more detail.
Sorry, hopefully that's working in terms of the transition of the slides. So I'm going to deep dive into some of the financial issues that we see patients and carers come to us every day looking for support with. And, you know, I think a lot of people are diagnosed with cancer and then they don't realise that one of the first things that impacts them is their financial situation. They might not even have time to focus on processing their diagnosis and focus on what is my treatment going to be. It's more, how am I going to afford this, and how am I going to afford my everyday expenses? So that's what we see in the program. And as Sophie said, you know, we do see people who lose an income because of their diagnosis. They need to take time off work for treatment. They might actually even lose 2 incomes. So they might be taking time off to rest and recover, and they might have a carer who also needs to take some time off. So I thought I'd just delve into some of those financial issues and what some of the resolutions are that we support clients with through the service. So I guess starting at looking at alternative sources of income to a salary. So the 3 main types of assistance that we provide through the service is access to Centrelink, access to super, and access to insurance. So super and insurance I'm going to really deep dive into in my next slide. So in terms of Centrelink, our financial advisors through the service will support clients with Centrelink, and there are a whole range of different payments that someone might be eligible for during a diagnosis or while caring for someone. So some of those types of Centrelink include income equivalent payments. So that could be the disability support pension if you're permanently unable, or if you're unable to work, the New Start allowance. There's also payments for sickness, so a sickness allowance. And there's also various payments to do with parenting. So a parenting payment, a family tax benefit, and the like. And then there are also Centrelink payments for carers. So there is a carer's pension and a carer's allowance. And you're entitled to those based on an eligibility requirement, but also based on the hours of care that you're providing to, say, a person affected by cancer, or someone that you need to provide that full-time or part-time care for. So I would really encourage you to contact Centrelink or to talk with your social worker about Centrelink. It is also something that we would assist clients through the service to access as well. And then superannuation and insurance I'll leave for now, and I'll dive into that in a moment. So I might just jump forward to managing debt. So I guess there's those 2 arms of how do I access alternative sources of income, but also how do I manage my debts while I'm either waiting for that income to come in or as they keep rising. So what we look at in terms of debt management and how we can support is what type of debt it is. So if it's a large a mortgage or a credit card, something that's a debt to a credit provider, it could be a personal loan to a bank as well, then cancer patients or carers might be able to access what we call a hardship variation. So I'm not sure how many people know about a hardship variation. I certainly didn't know what it was until I came into this role, but it is something that we support clients with by connecting them with financial advisors or even lawyers through the service. And what it is a temporary stop or reduction in mortgage repayments or credit card repayments for a period of time. So the key part of a hardship variation is that it is temporary and that someone is going to either return to work so that they're able to service that mortgage, pay the mortgage, or that they might be looking to access their super or insurance in the future. So that's a hardship variation. The way that people go about applying for it is actually just writing to their bank. You can contact your bank directly, and that might be something that you'd consider doing when you are diagnosed with cancer. And if you're faced with a situation where you can't pay your mortgage, could be that you would approach your bank directly to say, what are my options here? It is also something that our financial advisors would assist with through the pro bono program. For a smaller debt, like a utility bill and those everyday expenses that are just going to keep coming in the door, you might consider things like payment plans. So a lot of energy providers will allow payment plans. So it's contacting them to talk about what your options are. And you might consider refinancing or debt consolidation. So if you've got numerous debts, consolidating them so the interest might be less. Again, I'm not a financial planner. I just connect people with financial planners. So we do hear of these issues all the time, but I would really encourage you, before you make decisions around your debts, to talk with either a financial planner or a financial counsellor. And I thought that's what I would talk about next, is what the difference is between a financial planner and a financial counsellor. So through the Pro Bono program, we connect people with financial planners, and what they do is, and what they're specialist in, is helping clients to deal with their assets. So they would help a client with access to super and insurance. They'd also help a client with access to Centrelink, and they'd help clients manage large debts. So like looking at hardship variation, so your mortgages, your big credit cards. What a financial counsellor does is they more deal with people who have smaller debts and potentially not as many assets. So they might not be dealing in the space of superannuation and Centrelink, but more negotiating with your creditors around unpaid utility bills, credit cards, and those debts that you might have that are everyday debts. So a financial counsellor you can access, so it's not through the Pro Bono program, but there is a free national service that provides financial counselling support, and that's called the National Debt Helpline. So there's details in the later slide right at the end about how to access a financial counselling service. So the National Debt Helpline are a telephone service, but they can also put you in touch with a local service on the ground, hopefully in your community, who can provide face-to-face support, and that's always a free service. So hopefully I'm not inundating you with information. I'm going to dive into superannuation insurance. This is probably one of my favourite topics. I'm very biased and people think, oh my gosh, Michelle, that's so boring. But I think it's really interesting, and I think it's a real area where we can support people affected by cancer through the service. And a lot of people aren't aware of their superannuation and insurance entitlements. So I guess the question that we get all the time from our cancer patients and carers is, can I access my super early, and how do I do that? And do I need to do that? So so hopefully everyone understands, the nature of super, I guess, in terms of, it's about a 9%, I think it's 9 point something percent from your salary that goes out into your superannuation fund. If you're ever unsure about how to find your super, you can log on. So it's ATO Online Services is where you can find your super, and you can find any lost super. They should have a list of your super funds that you have, super accounts that you have. So people may have multiple accounts if you have different employers and you haven't assigned a superannuation fund as you were changing your job. It'll be able to tell you your funds, and that's linked through MyGov. So you can link your ATO Online Services to MyGov. So that would be the best way to access it, is through your MyGov account. So when you're 65, you can have access to your super either as a lump sum or as a pension. But before 65, there are some rules in order to access it early. So those are the areas that we support clients with. So what I've listed here on this slide is some of the largest grounds to access your super under. So I'll just talk through those and how someone might go about accessing superannuation early. So severe financial hardship is the first ground, and what that requires is that someone has has been on Centrelink for more than 26 weeks, so 6 months. And usually that's an income equivalent payment, so like your disability support pension or your New Start allowance, and that they're unable to meet immediate living costs. Now, you can't access the entire amount of your super under severe financial hardship, but you can access up to $10,000. So it is trying to help you get through that period of severe financial hardship. So another access ground is being permanently unable to work. So that's when someone is unable to work for a job that they are skilled for. So for example, a truck driver who is no longer able to drive, that could be something that they could potentially access their super under. In this ground, you can access your super as a lump sum, but some superannuation funds, and I think it's only 1 or 2 at the moment, but do require that you access it in instalments. So that would be something that you'd have to look at under your policy. Another one of the grounds that we assist clients with through the service is accessing super under terminal illness. So that's when someone has less than 24 months to live, and it's certified by 2 medical professionals. So one of those medical professionals does need to be a specialist. And if someone is able to access their super under that ground, then they're able to access it as a lump sum. So the idea is that you might be able to access that superannuation before someone passes away, so they can pay off their mortgage repayments and do those things they want to do, so make them feel like they're financially stable and that they can set their family up. So the other thing to think about, or a very important thing to think about, is whether or not you have any insurance. So what a lot of people don't know is that they might have default insurance attached to their superannuation. So it's really important to either read the policy or get some advice before you take your superannuation out of your account, because you may lose your insurance. So during your superannuation contributions, you're actually making contributions to your insurance by paying premiums. So typically the default insurance that would be attached to your super fund could be life insurance, and it could be TPD, total and permanent disability insurance. You may also have income protection insurance. So maybe we'll start with income protection insurance. So that one allows you to access, if you have it under your fund, allows you to access a salary, and typically it's about 75% of your full entitled salary for a period of time, and often it's up to about 2 years. So if someone does have that, it's an excellent way for them to get through a period of hardship, or to get through a time where they might be going through cancer treatment or caring for someone who is going through cancer treatment. Whereas life and permanent disability insurance, the grounds to access those are very similar to the grounds to access your superannuation. But it will mean that you may get, so for example, if you had, say, $10,000 in your superannuation preserved, you may have life insurance, which could be an additional $100,000. So it will exponentially increase the potential amount of money that you would be able to access. So it is really important, I think I'll reiterate, just to check the insurances that you have in place before you went about accessing any of your superannuation. The things that a financial planner can help with, so they can help with access to super insurance and figuring out what would be the best process for your situation, is you've also got to have a think about what is my current situation and how will this money that I access impact on my Centrelink payments, for example. So that might change how much you access in a given time, as well as looking at any tax implications for access to superannuation or insurance. So for example, income protection insurance, if you're accessing that one, so that's the one that's similar to your salary, that one is taxed as your salary would be. But something like terminal illness application for superannuation isn't taxed at all. So it is important to have a think about what are the tax implications. And I guess that's where that financial advice really steps in, because it can be really tailored to your situation, and you can ensure that you're accessing the right amount of money, the most amount of money that you possibly can, but at the right time. So yeah, so that's, and I guess that's everything that a financial planner would assist with through our service. So if this does seem like something that, you know, you are interested in, you feel like, yes, I'd really like a financial planner's advice, we'd really encourage you to get in touch with Cancer Counsel, our information support line 131120, or have a chat with Kate about how you might be able to be referred. Yeah, that was a lot about financial stuff. So I'm going to pass over to Sophie, who's going to talk a bit about the legal side of the support that we can provide.
Thanks, Michelle. So I guess the most common types of legal assistance that we assist people with through our program is around planning ahead and getting your affairs in order. So that might include preparing a will, appointing a power of attorney, or arranging guardianship for children. But there are a range of other legal issues that we can help with through our program. So these can be things like employment law disputes. So if somebody's been unfairly dismissed or discriminated against in the workplace due to cancer, or credit and debt matters. So if somebody is struggling to repay a mortgage, for example, and they'd like some advice around negotiating with a lender. and as well as superannuation and insurance disputes. So like Michelle just touched on, it's a really important, I guess, part of the work we do is helping people to access superannuation insurance. But often we can see people who've already put in claims that might have been rejected for some reason. So we can refer people to a lawyer for assistance appealing those decisions. But what I'm going to focus on for the next couple of minutes is just about getting your affairs in order. And I guess the most important things to think about when you're thinking about preparing those types of legal documents. So firstly, what is a will and why is it so important to have a will? Well, a will is a legal document that outlines what somebody would like to happen to their assets when they pass away. And these assets make up their estate. So anybody who's over the age of 18 can prepare a will as long as they're sound of mind to be able to understand what a will is and exactly what they're including in it. So it's really important that everybody prepares a will, regardless of where they are at their stage of treatment or how much they think they have to leave people. And this is because having a will in place ensures that your assets are left to the people that you would like them to be. Because if somebody dies without a will, it's left up to the law to decide how their assets will be distributed. And often this can mean that your assets might not go to the people that you would like them to go to. Having a will in place can also make it a lot easier for family and friends if a person passes away, and easier for them to make legal and financial arrangements once this happens. And this is because if somebody does pass away without a will, the processes involved in administering their estate can become a lot more costly and complicated for family members. So what exactly is in a will? Well, firstly, your will sets out your beneficiaries. So they're the people that you would like to leave your assets to. So this could be money, property, or other possessions. And a will also sets out who you would like to be responsible for making sure that these assets are distributed. And this person is called your executor. A will can also include a wish around who you would like to look after your children if you and the child's other parent should pass away before they're 18. And this is called a testamentary guardian. This isn't binding in a will, however, and any binding guardianship of children does need extra legal advice outside of your will. One important thing to think about in terms of your will is that superannuation is often treated quite differently to the rest of your estate and typically doesn't fall as part of your estate in your will. So to make sure that your superannuation does go to the person that you would like it to, what you can do is you can tell your super fund who you would like to receive this. So you can do this by completing a binding nomination, and that's typically done by completing a form with your superannuation fund and generally needs to be updated every 3 years or so. But if you would like around this, the best thing to do is to contact your super fund to ask exactly what you need to do. The other important things to think about when considering getting your affairs in order is whether you need to appoint any substitute decision makers. So the main types of substitute decision makers you can appoint are a power of attorney and also an enduring guardian. But these are state-based documents, and so the names of the documents do differ in each state. So I'm just going to generally refer to them as a power of attorney. So generally, an enduring power of attorney gives somebody else the authority to make property and financial decisions on another person's behalf. So this can include making decisions around bills or managing bank accounts and any payments or property, any decisions around those that somebody might not be feeling up to making and they might want somebody to make on their behalf. An enduring power of attorney does mean that this stays in effect if a person does lose the ability to make these decisions themselves. And then depending on each state, a power of attorney can also apply to medical and lifestyle decisions, but in some states, a separate document often called an enduring guardian or an enduring power of guardianship, needs to be appointed to allow somebody to make health and lifestyle decisions on your behalf. So these documents can allow another person to make decisions around medical treatment and healthcare, as well as where you should live and any other personal services that you might need to receive. So these documents are slightly different to an advanced healthcare directive, which instead is a document that outlines what type of medical treatment you would or would not like to receive, and you might have heard this referred to as a living will. This isn't something that we help with through our program, and we would typically suggest that somebody speak to their medical team if they'd like to prepare this document. So how exactly does somebody prepare a will and power of attorney documents, and how can we help? We would suggest that if you are thinking about preparing a will or power of attorney documents, that you seek legal advice. This is really important to make sure that the documents are valid and also that they're, I guess, appropriate for your personal circumstances as well. But through the program, we can refer cancer patients to lawyers who volunteer their time with the program and can give people legal advice and prepare these documents for them on a free basis. So I guess it's important for us to note that this we can only assist cancer patients with preparing wills and powers of attorney, and for someone to be eligible, they do need to be unable to afford the cost of assistance. But if you are thinking about legal advice and preparing these documents, the best thing to do would be to find a lawyer in your local area, or if you would like to be referred to our program, you can contact our information and support line on 13 11 20, or as Michelle said, speak to Kate for some more information. All right, I'll pass back to Michelle for a little bit more information around our booklets and where to get this advice.
Thank you. I think, you know, Sophie and I always have the conversation at work about how everyone should have a will and power of attorney document. And, you know, it is one of those things that often we'll be talking with lawyers and I say, but you've got those documents, don't you? And I say, yeah, I do, don't worry. But it is a document, all documents that everyone should have in place. I'm actually going to be unconventional and jump back a second because I realised that I forgot one of my grounds for super on my slide, and I really apologise. I just got too excited and I didn't look at my notes. So I'm just going to jump back for a moment and just talk about compassionate grounds for early access to super. And I apologise that I missed that one off. So compassionate grounds for early release of super really sit around an unpaid bill that you might have. And that could be a surgery bill, it could be a bill for modifications to your home, or it could be where, and this wouldn't be a bill, but this could be where you have an imminent threat of foreclosure on your home. So you'd apply to the ATO for early access to super under compassionate grounds like that. And I'll detail in a second our fact sheets, which provide a bit more information around the compassionate grounds for early release of super. But what is important to note is that you can only access the amount of money that you would need to pay for that specific thing. So if it was for surgery, for example, then it would be the payment of the bill, the surgery bill. So just to make you aware that does exist. Now I'll go back to where I was meant to be. So I guess what I just also want to talk about is what resources we have available here at Cancer Council. If you are interested in finding out more, you may not be ready for a referral to a professional, or you may not feel like you need to speak with a professional right now, but we do have a range of legal and financial as well as workplace fact sheets available on your State and Territory Cancer Council website. A lot of our social workers would have copies of these fact sheets as well. So there's a series of about 12 fact sheets, and you can see a couple on the slide there, and they really delve into these issues that our clients face, that patients and carers are facing throughout their diagnosis and their cancer journey. So things like superannuation and cancer, insurance and cancer. We've got one on dealing with debts, one with dealing with debts after death, we've got one on getting your affairs in order. So it talks through a lot of those things that Sophie talked about tonight. And those are state-based fact sheets, those getting your affairs in order. So they talk about the specific documents that would be relevant in your state or territory. We also have an employment law fact sheet around employment rights and leave entitlements and things like that. And then we do have a bit of a thicker booklet on cancer and your finances, and that goes through accessing alternative sources of income, managing debt, and looking at what services are available to support you in that space. So I would really encourage you to have a look at those booklets and fact sheets if you haven't already, particularly where there's a specific issue. You think, oh, I'd just like to know a little bit more. Those fact sheets are only about 3 to 4 pages, and they're all prepared by our pro bono lawyers involved in the service. So we work in consultation with them. So it's lawyers and financial advisors who are providing the content. Great. And then I've just got a slide on where to next. So I know that this was quite a lot of information, and you might be wondering, where do I go next? And that could be the fact sheets or the booklets, or it could be any one of these resources that I've popped on this slide. So Cancer Council information and support, we are available on 13 11 20. So that's how you would access the pro bono program. It's also how you would access any of Cancer Council's information and support services. So if you wanted physical copies of our booklets, or you're interested in other practical support services that we might offer, accommodation, transport to treatment, financial assistance, and the like. So 13 11 20 is staffed by health professional consultants, and we're available 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. You can also access our website. So the website on there is the Cancer Council Australia website, but we have a website for each state and territory, which has got information about all the support services we can offer as well. We would encourage you to speak with your healthcare team, your social worker if you have one, at your local treatment centre. They are a wealth of knowledge and know a lot about different services that are available there to support, and will be able to provide you with information. And the other organisations that we've just listed there are some of the specific organisations that could assist with these issues that we've talked about tonight. So the National Debt Helpline I raised earlier, so that's the financial counselling service, that free telephone advice service that's staffed by financial counsellors, but also they can connect you with a financial counsellor in your local area who you could see face-to-face at a community centre or a Salvation Army or an Anglicare. Those are the types of organisations that offer that support. Then I've got AFCA, which is the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. That's actually a body that you would go to if you had a dispute about your insurance or your superannuation. So they look after insurance and superannuation, as well as creditors. So you could go there if you had a dispute and you weren't interested, you know, if you didn't want the support through a Cancer Council pro bono program, you wanted to do it yourself and you were happy to do that, that's where you could go. A financial counsellor may also do that on your behalf if needed. Then there's ASIC's Money Smart website. That website has a range of different information about how to work through different financial issues. So there's a section on budgeting, there's also a section on credit and debt management. So I'd really encourage you to check that out. And then I just popped on there the National Association of Community Legal Centres. So there are a range of different legal centres across the country who provide different types of legal support. So some of the areas that, for example, our program wouldn't assist with are things like complex family law issues, domestic violence, bankruptcy, and those things are all supported by community legal centres. So definitely encourage you to go onto that, to give them a ring. They've also got a website if there is a different legal issue that you're encountering, or you'd just like to get some initial information. That's it from us, I think. I think our last slide is just a thank you slide. So I'll bring us both back. So I think from here, we just thought we'd open it up to questions, any questions that anyone might have. Really keen to try and work through those.
Oh, thank you so much, Sophie and Michelle. It's been really informative for me. I always when I hear people like you, and certainly when I met with you a little while ago, I was just reminded of how much I don't know. So I know a lot about things like treatments and how tumours work and things like that. But when it comes to legal and financial stuff, I'm all at sea. So I was listening to that really intently, and knowing that I will want to go back and have a listen again to the talk, because there was lots of things that I didn't know on there. Now, everyone's been very polite and sat back and not asked any questions in the question box, which may mean that the information was so utterly complete that we've covered everything we need to cover. But I had some questions that I was jotting down and had thought of while you were talking. So what I might do is ask one or two of those questions and give our audience a chance to write their questions in the question box. If you can't find it, it's down the bottom of your screen, and there's a little box saying Q or Q&A, and you can type a question in there, and we'll, with the magic of the internet, be able to see the question, and I'll be able to direct that to our guest speakers. So, but I had some questions. So you've talked a lot about the service from the Cancer Council, which I just think is fantastic, by the way. I'm aware, and you can tell me if I'm correct here, but my understanding is that for this to be a free service, you need to be at low income. I've got two questions around that. What's the threshold? Like, is it that you have to have a healthcare card, or what's the means test that is done? And also, if you are earning an income, are you still able to access the service? And if so, how much would that cost? If, for example, if it was me and I'm still working, but concerned that I may need to reduce my hours or stop, or there's other financial pressures. So I'm still obviously earning an income. I don't have a healthcare card, thankfully, but and someone's just popped up a question saying, well, you just asked my question. So David, I read your mind. So
great.
Is that okay to throw that question at you too?
Absolutely. Do you want?
Thank
Shall I
you.
go?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess in terms of our means test, it is a case by case. So we assess every single person as a unique person as they come through the program. The types of questions that we ask. So if someone is coming to us, so they're aware of what they will be asked. We ask income, so whether or not they're working, and that could be income from work. It could also be from Centrelink payments or insurance payments. So some of our clients will be receiving insurance payments. We also ask about the living situation. So do they own property? Are they renting? If they own, is there a mortgage? Are they in Department of Housing? Any financially dependent children? And then we ask for significant assets and debts. So we don't require documentation. We definitely trust the honesty of the people that we're speaking with, and typically we're looking for estimates. We're not looking for specific dollar amounts, and what we're really looking at is whether or not someone has the liquid assets to pay. So do they have significant income coming in, or do they have some significant savings that would mean that they would be able to afford the cost of advice? And then, and that would be something then that we'd communicate back to the client. So it could be that someone may still be working, but they may have had a reduction in income because they're working less hours, or they're on some kind of, semi-partially paid leave. A family might have one income still coming in, but we will weigh that up with how many financially dependent children they might have and their ongoing expenses. So, we would also occasionally, we don't ask about medical expenses, but some of our clients will let us know that they might have a particularly expensive drug that they're paying or something like that, and that would be something that we would take into account. So it is certainly case by case. And then if someone isn't eligible for free assistance, and that's the next part of the question. So we don't offer a discounted service, but what we do is we offer the details of a professional in the client's area who participates in our program, who they could approach to discuss the fees involved with assistance. So it would be up to the lawyer to make that the lawyer, the financial advisor, whoever that professional might be, to make the determination as to what the cost involved would be. Some of our law firms may be willing to offer a discounted price, but we couldn't guarantee that. And that's really something for the client and the professional to have a conversation about. So There are also a lot of financial advisors who do offer a first initial appointment for free, and that could be something that someone might like to discuss with the professional. I've never heard of a lawyer doing that, but I think a financial advisor are often willing to do that, because then they can show the impact of the assistance that they can provide. So that might be something that someone would like to ask a financial advisor if they weren't eligible for free assistance through the service.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you. That's that has answered the question, I think. Can I just ask, if I was just, I've never done this and maybe I should have, but if I was just going off the street to a financial counsellor, what would be like a ballpark figure that you would expect to pay, just if you were, you know, a Joe Bloggs going into a financial counsellor's office? What would be your estimate of what?
So Kate, you're gonna get me touch on a technicality here. So
Sorry.
Your financial counsellor is your free service. So you'll never pay for a financial counsellor's support.
So financial advisor is what I'm asking you about.
That's right. That's right. So a financial advisor or a financial planner. It's really hard for us to give a ballpark on that. I think because the level of assistance can be so varied. So it could be, and I'm absolutely throwing figures around, but it could be a few $1,000s for something like access to super and then the prolonged advice following that. But it's not something that I would know straight away as to, and I think it does differ from financial advisor, and it would really depend on those. And I think that comes back to everyone's got a very unique financial situation, and it's making sure that the advice is tailored to that person.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's interesting. I would have to save up, but that's okay. So the good thing is that we've got a couple of questions that have come through the questions and answers box now, which is great. The first question might be actually one for our next webinar, which I haven't actually talked very much about because it's still in a very much a baby sort of planning stage, which is we're thinking about doing a webinar on workplace workplace issues and HR issues. So that's still very much in the pipeline. We're just sort of in the planning process for that. But knowing that this is also an area that Cancer Council have a service to assist in, and this is a big area of concern for our patients with neuroendocrine cancer. So I think this question, but I'm going to put it in because you never know, you might know the answer, and if you don't, then we can hold it in reserve for our next webinar. The question's from Jane, and it's, could I get help to apply for long service leave? I did try to get before 10 years when I had treatment, but they said I was unable, and then I enlisted my union. Anyway, I did not get help, and now it's 10 years. So it sounds like this person's now would be due for their long service leave.
I think my understanding, but again, I will definitely preface that I'm not a HR advisor or an employment lawyer. But I think, as we all know, typically you are able to access your long service leave at 10 years. Some roles are different in that you can access it a bit earlier. So it will really depend on that situation of the person and who their employer is and the industry that they work in. That's my understanding. But I think that could definitely be something that we take on notice as, depending on who your speakers are, Kate, as something to answer in the next webinar.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, look, I think that we're pretty keen to run that webinar. The financial toxicity study that's just been published really talks quite a lot about people needing to finish work early or reduce their work hours as a result of their neuroendocrine cancer. And because neuroendocrine cancer often affects people for many years, and often they have symptoms, high symptoms for many years. We know workplace issues are a really big issue for people. So I think this will probably be the next webinar that we run, but I just haven't got any dates or specifics about that. So watch this space for announcements about that. Hopefully we'll get something planned very soon. Now there's another person who's asked a question, which is, I have accessed super on terminal illness grounds and left it in my super fund. The more I spend, the less I have. Am I eligible to access your service for wills, etc.? I'm currently receiving Centrelink payments.
Do you want to answer?
So I think, as Michelle prefaced before, we really have to determine that on a case-by-case basis. I think we would consider your holistic financial situation. So, I mean, it would depend if you have other significant assets or if you have other debts. But I mean, having access to super doesn't necessarily rule somebody out and mean that they're ineligible. It would just mean that we would need to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Okay. So case by case, and possibly you could help depending on the broader circumstance.
Yeah.
So sounds like it's worth getting in touch. And the thing I would say is that as Michelle and Sophie mentioned earlier, there's a couple of ways you can do that. Certainly you can call 13 11 20 in your state, and the staff at the Cancer Council can put a referral in for the service, and that does give the advantage of having a chat with the Cancer Council staff, because there's a wealth of information there, and I'm always referring people to the resources, the booklets, the programs, and they do vary from state to state, but you know, a lot of the state Cancer Councils have got really fantastic programs going. So, you know, I know about quite a lot of those, and I'll promote those as much as I can, but I'm always really keen to share the love and to have people contact more than just me. So you can contact the Cancer Council on 13 11 20, but you're also welcome to call me. And we can talk about all things net, and I can actually put in direct referrals to the pro bono service myself. So there's, as I said, all roads eventually lead to Rome, and so there's a number of ways you can access that. So I had another question, which was around the superannuation and the nominated beneficiary, or the superannuation beneficiary. See, I'm such a legal expert, I had to write down what I was actually asking because I don't know the words. I don't speak this language. What's the default if you don't fill in a binding nomination form?
So it varies, and I guess the easy answer is that it's up to your super fund. So each super fund might have their own different policy. It might be to next of kin, but I guess at the end of the day, it will be up to that super fund. So the safest thing to do is to just contact them, I guess either find out what their policy is and to who that would go to, and then appoint the beneficiary you would like.
And so, can I just, sorry, you go.
No, that's
just checking I covered off all bases.
No, absolutely. I think really encourage you to contact your super fund and assign the person that you really want. So we do see referrals come through for people who are accessing the superannuation after someone's passed away, and they might say something like, oh, you know, this person is trying to access it, but actually, you know, it should have always gone to me. So it is better to set that up ahead of time, and to have that binding nomination in place.
Thank you. I had another question about that, and then Donna has asked a question in the questions and answers. So there's a couple queued up, but hopefully this will be quick. But I'm going to pull a scenario out of the air. And again, I'm using me as an example because why not? I haven't got cancer, but just say I do. I've got a husband, I've got 2 kids. If I was going to do one of these beneficiary forms, binding nomination forms, and clearly I should probably look into that myself, just for my own financial well-being check, as well as update my will, which hasn't been updated for 20 years, but don't mention that. Who would, can you say, you know, would it be better to put kids in directly, or a partner, or is that an impossible question to answer in a 30-second spot?
It's not impossible to answer. Actually, my answer, I mean, it's obviously a personal decision for you or for the person who's nominating, but my answer is also to have a look at the tax implications of that. So that could be something that you have a conversation with a financial advisor or a lawyer about as well, is if I left it to X person, so my children instead of my husband, say, for example, is that going to mean that they're any less worse off in the long run tax-wise? So what are the tax implications of leaving it to that person? Ultimately, it's your decision to make. And there are some people, so there are assigned beneficiaries. So I'll just give you an example. I know about 10 years ago, I went to my superannuation fund, and I said, I'll nominate all of my siblings. And they said, oh no, that's actually not a preferred person to nominate. And then they list out the preferred people. So it's people like your de facto partner or your husband or wife, your parents, and your children. So it's having a look at your super fund and what their requirements are as well. And then it's thinking about what are the tax implications.
Well, that's a really wise comment. So thank you for that. That's great. Now there's the one that's queued up in the questions and answers box is a good one. So it's from Donna, and it's, hi, is there any assistance applying for a loan and potentially being discriminated against due to having a cancer diagnosis?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a curly one.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard to prove that the cancer diagnosis was the reason that you were discriminated against. But I think it would be something that we consider taking on through the service. It's not something that we do all the time. And it would be something that we would probably require a lawyer to assist with through the service. We have dealt with things like this in terms of travel insurance. So that's probably, so in terms of insurance, where someone's gone to apply for the insurance and been knocked back because of their diagnosis or that kind of thing. So we have played a little bit in that space. But in terms of applying for a loan, not as much, because usually that would sit more around the financial side of things as opposed to the cancer diagnosis. So it's certainly something we've seen in insurance. Yeah, we do also, and it's will shortly be released, is a new life insurance fact sheet. So it should come out in the next couple of months. So Kate, when it does, I'll share that with you so you can share it. And that really talks to that process of applying for insurance when you do have a cancer diagnosis or you have a previous cancer diagnosis. So that's quite an interesting read, and I guess quite a similar issue in terms of the applying for a loan versus,
Yeah, okay. There's a follow-up question in my head about that and it's just disappeared. So it might come back. There's one more question that's come through a text message. And then there's someone, David's also made a comment. So that's okay. We'll squeeze them in before the end. The one that came through via text message, so this is a person who's listening on their phone. With superannuation, does the cause of death have any bearing on the payout?
My understanding is it does, but I am not an insurance lawyer or a superannuation lawyer, so I wouldn't want to speak out of turn. It would be something that you would have to have a look at your policy. So you'd want to read the fine print of your policy to determine, or have a financial advisor support you in that space, or even just contacting the insurer or the superannuation fund directly to find out what that does look like. Yeah.
And could someone contact the superannuation fund anonymously and just ask what the policy, the default policy is, or is it individualised depending on from person to person?
It could be, the policy might change depending on when you took it out and the type of policy you've taken out. So it might not be different depending on person to person, but it could be different based on that. So I think really you'd want to have that policy in front of you. So you could definitely contact them and say, "What can you send me my policy?" That's something that they should be doing in any event that you should be able to see. So you should be able to contact them and say, "I need a copy of my policy," if you don't have a copy of it. And then you could read it yourself. I feel like you probably could call them to ask a question about your policy as well. So I'm not sure in terms of their requirements as to disclosure of who you are. And that would be something that you just have to tackle with them over the phone, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that.
There are though, Kate, sorry, just thinking, there are some insurance advice services, so legal advice services that provide insurance law advice exactly like this over the phone. So I would really encourage you probably just Google it in terms of insurance law advice over the phone. There's definitely, I think it's the Insurance Law Service, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
So we could actually look that up and we'll put it in the notes on the YouTube video.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
And the Financial Rights Legal Centre has an insurance hotline as well that you can call. and that's the same body that has the National Debt Helpline. So that might be a good website to
so we'll definitely put some links and resources for people in the notes on the YouTube video so that people can chase these things up. That's really helpful. There's just one more comment from David saying, is it worthwhile mentioning that receiving super terminal illness grounds is tax-free with the insurance as opposed to receiving on hardship or incapacity grounds? Is this correct?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier that accessing your super under terminal illness grounds is tax-free. That's correct. Access under financial hardship or permanent disability may have tax implications. So that's something you'd want to contact the superannuation fund to discuss before you accessed it, because that might change how you access and how much you access. So similar to the income protection insurance that we talked about, that one is taxed. Yeah, that's the same, and it can differ from insurer to insurer. So it's definitely something to talk to them directly about in terms of those implications, and something to think about before you access.
Fantastic. I have one more question, and I hope it's okay. We're stretching the time, but if you've got if you're sort of a very kind of bland, ordinary, two parents, no kids, or two kids, everyone's in the home, like it's all very cookie cutter, do you need to see a lawyer to do a will, or one of those free legal kits that you get from the news agency? Would that do if everything's very uncomplicated?
I think it's going to depend on if you want the peace of mind to know that it's going to be legally valid. So I guess unless you do a lot of research and you know what all the legal requirements are in order to have a valid will, then you might like to prepare that yourself. But I think to make sure it is valid, we would suggest that you do speak to a lawyer about that, just so that you do make sure that it is valid and that there's no concerns around that.
And I think as well, if you're thinking, you want to get assistance from a lawyer for a will outside of the pro bono program, I'd encourage you to shop around. So lawyers have all different prices for how much a will cost through them. Definitely, if you've got someone who's got a recommendation from a lawyer, consider that. But I would really encourage you to contact a few different law firms to discuss the fees that would be involved.
The other thing I would mention about that, it was a surprise for me because I'm obviously a financial and legal numpty. I'm much more interested in cancer. But when I did do my will, I discovered almost after it had been signed that actually we didn't need to pay for this lawyer to do it because she was providing it as part of a service for my union. She said, you're not in a union, are you? And I said, I think I probably am in the nurses union. And she said, you don't have to pay. So that was a nice surprise it's probably worth just checking out for other people who might also be legal and financial numpties. Look, thank you so much, Sophie and Michelle. We could have talked for another hour probably about this stuff. And I'm so grateful to you for your time and your generosity and your sharing your expertise so graciously with us tonight. So it was super useful. As I said, we will put some links up in the YouTube video notes for further places that you can seek support. But as we've plugged all night, the Cancer Council, their phone number is 13 11 20. And just so you know, my phone number, if anyone's kind of scratching for what that is, it's 1300 Cure Nets or 1300 287 363, and that's an Australian toll-free number. So that's how you can get more support. And just before we finish off, I'll just remind everybody, when we finish, we will be directing you to a evaluation screen. So there's a very, very short evaluation survey that we would love for you to fill in. It just gives us some really vital feedback about not only this webinar, but future ones and topics that you would like to see us cover. We're keen to do more and more of these. With technology, it gets easier and easier. So we're keen to shrink the miles and get us all connected in with the information in this way. So thank you very much. And just so there's one message in the chat box saying, thank you, ladies. It was very informative. So it's a pleasure for me. And thank you to Sophie and Michelle and for everyone who dialed in.